It's time for the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, answering your questions from the General's quarters every week, right here on Volquest.
Good Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast. Merry Christmas to everyone on this Christmas Eve. I want to thank our friends at Smoky Mountain Organics for their continued support of the podcast and all they do for us. Smoky Mountain Organics got 4 locations to serve you: Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, that location in Knoxville, on Kingston Pike, just across from Trader Joe's. Remember, you can shop online as well at SmokyMountainOrganics.com. Smoky Mountain Organics, East Tennessee's most trusted health and wellness store. And again, we certainly appreciate all they do for us at Volquest.com. It's the mailbag edition with Rob Lewis and Austin Price. We've got plenty of questions to get to, and let's get going right out of the gate here. We'll start with, I need a percentage on Verse being evolved. Do you think he's a true instant starter, or will he need some time? Thanks, and Merry Christmas.
AP, you were giving me a percentage just before we started recording, breaking it down to a fraction. What you can repeat that?
Oh, geez.
Merry Christmas.
You know, man, I'm not going above 50%. I mean, things have trended. So I would have told you when he left here that there was less than 50% chance that he ends up here. Since then, I think it's went up to 50. That's where I'm at. I'm not willing to say that Tennessee's a prohibitive favorite, but I think Tennessee has just as good a shot as anyone else. And so, to me, they've trended the right way. He spent a lot of time with Rodney Garner on the phone in his drive from, Albany to Phoenix to where his parents live. And so, it's clear to me, and I think having everyone or most people, everyone on the site seeing the interview I did with Jared Verse, being able to be coached by Rodney Garner and the development is a big sticking point to him. And so can anybody, surpass that to get him and, keep Tennessee from getting him? To me, that's the biggest question.
Well, to me, the biggest question, Austin, is he going to take that 5th visit or not? If he's not, and I know he said that he can make a decision, go to a school he's not seen or visited. It's hard for me to see him doing that. Just listening to him and talking to him, as kind of analytical as he is about things, it's hard for me to see him signing with a place he's never seen or never visited. So, is he going to take the 5th visit or is he not going to take the 5th visit? I kind of got the impression from your interview, the 5th visit seems sort of unlikely.
Exactly. That's the feeling I got too.
But there's a lot of schools still calling, and a lot of schools have called here after the dead period has started trying to get him to visit. So to me, that's the biggest question, is whether or not he's going to take that 5th visit. If he doesn't, then I think you're probably looking at a Tennessee-Florida State battle, which is where I thought it was when he left Knoxville from his short stay here. So we'll see. 5th visit to me tells a lot about where that one is going. All Vol Recruiting with the next question wants to know, where does Tennessee stand with Shamar Porter and Justin Brown? Is Jacob Page a take? And Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, All Vol Recruiting. What do you got there on where does Tennessee stand? I know it's early with Porter and Brown.
They're in it with Porter more than they were. I would have said early in the football season, he hadn't been up here, and it felt like Tennessee just couldn't get any traction. They've got a little bit of traction with him now. Justin Brown, I think Tennessee's in a decent spot with. And then Jacob Page, if he wanted to commit, I think Tennessee would take him right now.
Okay. So we'll see what happens with those guys. Of course, Tennessee on the road in January, certainly working 23s and 24s, and that'll start in state. Bruce Fall wants to know, how have the other early enrollees that have participated in bowl practice look? Rob, we haven't got a chance to see them. One would imagine they jump in. It's in the middle of game planning. There's a lot of conversation taking place that those guys have no idea what that means,
Yeah, I mean, I think you made this point a couple weeks ago, but I think it's overrated to get those guys in here for bowl practice. I mean, your real benefit comes from being here in January and taking part in the offseason conditioning program, being here for spring practice when it's all, fundamentals install. I mean, right now when you're mostly getting ready to play a game, their heads are just spinning.
But don't you think socially it is and I'm with you. I mean, and that's what was my point earlier. But from a football standpoint, I don't think you get a lot take away. But from a social standpoint, if you get a week with guys going to your position group Christmas dinner, that type of thing. How big of a help is it socially, you think, for guys to make an adjustment?
I think it helps, but I don't think it's drastically different than getting here in January. It helps you, I guess, get a leg up on just seeing how different of an environment it is from high school. I don't care what kind of high school program you came from. When you roll into an SEC program, the attention to detail, the level of preparation, all that kind of, it's a whole different universe. So that helps. But again, 5 practices in December. How much of a big benefit is that from, rolling in January and, and getting your career started 6 weeks from now?
Yeah, Austin, it is unusual. Tennessee's got a sled load, not sled load, but they got 4 or 5 guys going through this, including a couple of kids from Florida that, when you're talking about an 8 or 10 hour drive to come up here and practice 4 or 5 times and go home for Christmas.
Yeah, it is. The one thing I think about it is, I think Rob's right. Like, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter a whole lot, but I guess, it's like if Tennessee gets a kid on campus and they had 0% chance that they had for go get the kid before he came, and let's say all of a sudden they have 20%, that's 20% you didn't have. So, it's 3 or 4 practices that you hadn't, been able to do before. It helps a little, but in the grand scheme, you're right. It's more just kind of getting acquainted, understanding the practice flow. That way, when you get to March and spring practice starts, you're not in shock value because how a college practice and a high school practice are run are 2 different things.
Yeah, but how many kids remember that? remember that? Some of those kids can't.
I can promise you,
1 week to the next.
Justin Williams will. That kid is intelligent. Is all get out. So,
that's true. That is true for sure. So again, out of the 20 signees, Tennessee will have 13 of them here midterm.
That's the
starting
crazy
in
number
January.
for me.
Yeah, that is a crazy number. Rob, I guess this is telling our age. Austin, you're in on this a little bit as well. But it was a big deal if you got 1 or 2 midterm enrollees. For somebody to enroll in January was such a shock, like a big time deal that would actually take place. Now over half your class is going to be here in January. Crazy.
And generally it was only a quarterback.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And now it's just like you say, it's commonplace.
Yeah. 13 of 20. CD Ball wants to know how big of a threat is Ohio State for Verse? Austin, I've not heard Ohio State. To me, that's not a school that
I've never heard their name mentioned one time.
Same here. I think Oklahoma, Florida, some of the LSU, some of those schools would be a bigger
schools
concern.
With coaching changes that have open spots.
Yeah, would be a bigger threat than anyone else. Farmer Vol wants to know, I know you can only worry about the ones you get, but for fun, can you name 1 player on offense and 1 player on defense UT had a legitimate shot at that signed with another school in early signing day that you would give their signatures to the good guys if you could? If your answers are Simpson and Nolan, then say it, but please give a second as well if those are your answers, because I figure those are the 2 obvious ones. So outside of Simpson and Nolan, anybody jump out to you there, AP?
No, not really.
I would say Dallin Hayden, but even I don't know that Tennessee had a legit shot to get it since it never got on campus.
Well, he did. He came, but he didn't talk to anybody. He came for that game. That's the thing is like, they didn't have a legit shot once they committed, but they had a real legit shot back in March at the Wades. All that talk aside, I think Keaton Wade's a stud, and I think Destin will end up being, really, really good, probably at the same position Keaton plays. I'm pretty adamant he's not a quarterback, but I think he's a phenomenal playmaker. And, if he buys into, playing outside backer or whatever, I think he can be just as good. Yeah, he's not as big, but he's not as big by design. Like, you're not going to be as big as Keaton. Keaton's trying to throw weight on. Destin's playing quarterback. He's not trying to throw a ton of weight on.
Yeah, I think both those guys can play. There's no doubt about that. And Tennessee certainly felt that way as well. I would also say a legitimate shot at they didn't get either one of those final 2 junior college defensive backs just because they needed those guys. Just because those guys were of need. Now I thought when he left here, I thought Agu was going to end up being a Vol, when he left the Tennessee visit here. But you look at those two junior college guys and the need Tennessee had at that position to close out. That would be a couple of guys as well. All right, to the next one we go. Is Nico actually attainable if Alabama wants him? Austin?
I mean, I don't want to say no, but I mean, like, at the same time, I mean, it's like, it's tough to beat Alabama on the recruiting trail, but guess what? Some kids are built different, and they're just built like, to go to a place and want to be the guy and not just be another guy at Alabama or another guy at Clemson, or just like back in the day, it would have been easy to say you don't want to be another running back or receiver at Tennessee. You want to make your name for yourself in another way. And so, I think Nico's kind of built that way. Alabama's obviously in it. Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, like those are the 4 teams in this league that stand out for Nico. And, Ohio State's trying to swing hard, but I don't think he wants to play in the North. I think he would prefer to play in the South, and he does want to leave the West Coast. And the fact that Malachi Nelson's already committed to Southern Cal, means he ain't going there and he ain't going to UCLA.
Does any chance Oklahoma gets in that with Levy moving out there? Or are they late to the party because of that? Just not because I know he liked Jeff Levy at Ole Miss. Does that give Oklahoma a shot, or you think they're too late because he's going to come off the board?
I mean, I guess in theory, yeah, they'll have a shot, but he's pretty adamant he wants to play in this league. And I know Oklahoma's coming into this league in a few years, but like it really sounds like to me they want to be in the South, not the Midwest.
I got you. Devin Hyatt going to give Tennessee a look?
I guess it depends if his brother stays here. I mean, he's going to have more options than Jalen did coming out of high school. So that one's going to be a lot harder than Jalen's ever was. So for me, I would put it on less than 50% chance he ends up here. Tennessee certainly will try. And if Jalen's still here, they'll have a shot. But Jalen's got to become more of a factor. If Jalen stays and he catches a ton of balls and scores a bunch of touchdowns, then I think that changes how Devin views Tennessee.
Anybody outside of Herring at the rush in position to keep an eye on?
I mean, like Vic Burley could do that, but more likely he's going to put on weight and, play strong side defensive end or maybe even move into defensive tackle over time. So, no, it's too early for all that right now.
All right. Do you think Morton is a possibility, even though he's going to visit that early as opposed to visiting late before signing day?
Yeah. Moton is someone who,
Morton, Moton,
it's Miami. I mean, Crystal Ball's got room to spare. It's hard for me to see him not getting a kid out of South Florida if he really wants him, because he's going to want to make a statement. And Moton's ranking is kind of ballooned here in the last little bit, Brent. So from a perception standpoint, landing that kid looks good and sets the tone for your 23s. But Tennessee certainly will swing, and Rodney's will keep swinging.
Yeah, you would think he's a must for Cristobal. I mean, just as you mentioned, to set a tone, and they got a need there. Final question in this group of questions here is, what are the must-haves on the Christmas table for dinner? Anybody got a must-have? We're all over the place on Christmas dinner because we do like a breakfast deal, and then some years it's steak, some years it's turkey, some years, like this year, it's going to be a pork loin. Our Christmas Day dinner is all over the map. So
Same here.
We don't have a set menu. Rob Lewis, you got a set menu? Y'all got a set Christmas menu?
No set menu.
Same thing here. All right.
Fluctuates.
Do what?
It fluctuates.
Fluctuates. What recruiting access advantages will the football staff have in Nashville that they're there for the bowl? Rob, there's nothing. It's dead.
Nothing. None. Zero.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no advantage. I mean, I guess Austin, Josh Heupel can meet with some former players. He can meet with some donors and people out there. But in terms of direct access to recruits, there's nothing there that's going to pay dividends for them being in Nashville for 5 days.
No, you're just in the city. Kids are seeing orange everywhere, seeing the power of the brand. So that does have an impact. When you have that much orange in one place, I do think that can leave an impact on the kid if the kid's out and about. And potentially could go to the game. The kid can go to the game just on his own time.
Right. Orange Grizz 91, provide any kind of progress report on redshirt players or how they've grown physically or mentally. We don't get a chance to see them, but Rob, anybody in this young crew you're really interested to see in the spring and kind of see where they are of guys who didn't play a ton of snaps or are redshirted this year? Is there anybody on this roster that jumps out to you? I mean, for me, it's where's Callaway, right? I mean, here's a guy who was playing early, didn't play down the stretch. They're redshirting
dropped
him.
a pass at Florida and went into witness protection program.
Right. So where is he? I think that's one that's most intriguing, probably the most logical, intriguing for me. The other one's Christian Charles.
Yeah, I was going to say Charles and Rucker on defense and Jimmy Callaway on offense, just because, I mean, you could clearly use some help in the secondary.
I was going to go Julian Nixon at tight end.
Oh, okay. I think
that's a good-looking kid.
Yeah, I think he's a guy nobody talks about. I mean, it's Miles Campbell,
Nixon,
it's
Trinity
Fant,
Bell.
Nobody talks about Nixon. It seems like
Nixon, Trinity Bell, and Cayman Marley, all guys that I just am more intrigued to see.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Tennessee behind the scenes support staff for football? How does it compare to other rival programs, including grad assistants, recruiting staff, etc.?
Well, nobody's going to touch Alabama. And up until they, had to put Muschamp on staff, like Georgia's wasn't that, spectacular. Alabama's just a totally different level because people go there to do the whole rehab thing with Nick for the image. And, that's just kind of, like, to me, they're very similar. Florida, Ole Miss, LSU, to me, all that's very similar.
Yeah, for me, I think the bigger question I have, I know Billy Napier said he's going to have an army of guys, Rob, and you're talking about how many guys you're going to add and this, that, and the other. For me, I think the question is going to be, where is Danny White financially in terms of rewarding his current guys and helping grow some positions off the field beyond an evaluator, but maybe somebody because you can do more things now in recruiting with some of your branding and marketing. How does he grow there? But you look at this, I mean, you see the big raise that Mark Stoops has got. You see where Sam Pittman's going. I mean, Josh Heupel is in the lower third. I know it's just year one. He's in the lower third. I think Alex Golesh may be the lowest paid offensive coordinator in the SEC at this point. Where is Danny White going to be after year one in terms of how much he elevates guys financially? I think that's a storyline for the early part of January here for me.
I think it's coming, don't you?
It has to be, right?
I mean, you just look around college. I just don't think money's an issue for anybody. I mean, with the new ESPN, I mean, for anybody in the SEC, let me say that with the new SEC contract, TV contract, I mean, Tennessee may not be in this financial shape that some of their peers are, but I don't think that money is, especially when you're talking about your $3 or $4 million to bump up Heupel and his staff. I just don't think that's a big deal.
I will say this: it feels like Mitch Barnhart wrote a retirement for himself. Like, I'm not dealing with a football coach anymore. At Austin, I mean, it feels like when you look at the financial parameters of that one, how much he's got, the buyout and where all that is at, it feels like Mitch Barnhart said, you know what, I'm gonna lock Mark Stoops up, and then the next guy can deal with that. I'm kind of done with football coaching contracts, because that's a pretty coaching friendly contract that Mark Stoops has gotten.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you look at the fact that he requires bare minimum win wise to roll it over, and then gets these nice chunk raises in there. He's got a cushy gig. I wouldn't want to leave either. When the expectations are low, you can go 9-3 and people are happy, but like you lose 3 in a row and lose to Tennessee, and people aren't like jumping off the bridge up there. They're calm and just ready for basketball to get here. And if there's a football game in between, they'll go to it and support. But I mean, I watched them leave, the stadium that night as I was going live with Russo on Channel 8. I mean, it was like, oh, well, we tried. Tennessee fans would have been walking out of there just, ready to fight, and Kentucky fans, now maybe in basketball they'd be that way, but in football, they're like, well, we did our best, and that's how it felt. So, I mean, the Kentucky job's a nice cushy gig with that current contract from Mark Stoops.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, JP.
AP, it's like the Kentucky football job's like being married to an ugly woman, isn't it? Just low XP, do the bare minimum, stay employed.
Time Time to move forward to JPL balls. Why do you think safety hasn't been considered a bigger priority in the portal? Seems to me like it was a bigness and weakness on defense last year, but I feel like wide receiver, tackle, edge guy, linebacker have been bigger priorities for the staff. Does this staff feel okay with what we have coming back at safety next year? Here's the thing.
I think it is. I think it is an important deal, and that's why they wanted, to land Marquise Gilbert so bad. Hubs. I mean, like he was so coveted by them, but when they did, you just don't knee jerk it. Like the people on the board can't grasp that. Like just because a kid was ranked coming out of high school doesn't mean he's a good player now. Like if you were a 4-star in 2018 and you got 6 catches for 32 yards in your career, what does that make you? That you're not a 4-star anymore. Like, you're a guy that's never been able to, manufacture anything at the college level. So like, if you don't have conviction about a kid in the portal, you don't take them, because ultimately most of these kids in the portal are going in the portal for a reason. They got problems academically, they got problems athletically, whatever. Now there are exceptions. There are kids that don't have any problems, and there are guys that are able to transition right in and play at their next stop, and they're fine. But a lot of times you're bringing on the problem that's at another school, you're bringing it to your school when you go into the portal. So you better have conviction about a kid if you're going to take him. I'm with Tennessee on this, like not knee jerking it. I've said forever, you can't live in the portal, but when you do, you better be sure about things. Like things did not pan out with Jawan Mitchell last year. I don't see any way he's back unless he really kind of changes his whole outlook on things. So, I mean, it's not that it's not a priority. I just don't think there's anybody in there that Tennessee's like, gotta have them.
Well, here's the thing too, Rob. At some point, they all count. And I know you got the rule. You get 7, and you can sign up to 32 guys or whatever. They still eventually count in terms of your 85, which affects your signing class numbers in the previous year. So you have to make a decision of, do you want to take 4 or 5, or do you want to say, you know what, we're not going to take that many. We'll take a couple, and that gives us 2 more to sign next year that we can back count or we can manipulate the numbers on, because it's helping us stay under the 85. To me, I look at it, if I'm getting a new job and I'm a new guy coming in like Florida or some of those guys, they've got to go heavy portal, right? They've got to go portal because their numbers, because of the number of guys that they had leave. But if you've got some establishment, you got to look at a couple guys in the portal and say, how many wins is that going to be worth to us? What's it going to mean to us? I mean, can this guy really be the difference in us getting over the proverbial hump in year 1, or does he have multi-years and we think he's better than a high school kid? There's a lot more factors in it than just say, hey, you got 7. They say you can add people. Let's go add people. There's just a lot more balancing act to it than I think a lot of people look at. And
I go back to AP's point about fit, culture. Why is the kid leaving? There aren't many Hendon hookers hitting the portal, in my opinion, in any sport. And Hubbard, you love these numbers. I saw this one today. 865 kids have gone into the portal since August, and only 222 have landed anywhere. So there's over 600 kids out there looking for a home.
Yeah, should be an eye opener to some kids looking, for greener pastures, because they're not always there. They're not easy to find for sure. But again, Tennessee's going to be active in the portal. They're just going to be more patient, which I'm with Austin. I totally agree with. Pine Mountain Vol wants to know, since you got to do more interviews with players this year, which player personality did you enjoy visiting with the most?
Javonte Payton.
Yeah, Peyton was fun. He was fun.
I enjoyed Javonte more than anybody.
I tell you a guy that I gained a ton of respect for, who I really I think is a really good guy, and obviously is a good football player. I've enjoyed kind of getting to know his personality a little bit. That's Theo Jackson. He's never the most dynamic interview. Okay, that's not what I mean by that. But he's come a million miles in his interview skills, and he's got a pretty good personality. And Rob, he's obviously been a really good football player for Tennessee this year. I'm glad to see his success. It's been fun getting to know him a little bit this fall.
Yeah, I would have said Theo, and I would also say Cedric Tillman. I mean, that's a kid that I don't know if we've ever talked to Cedric before, but he's never done anything on the football field, and it now turns in the kind of season he did. It was both of those guys I enjoyed talking to, because you could tell they appreciated the success that they were having based off everything that they've been through.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm going to read this question. I'm not sure any of us can answer this in the remaining time that we have on the podcast, but Orange Grizz has been all in this mailbag, and I'm going to read this question. I'm going to let you guys just give a reaction to it, and we'll go from there. If you were named head coach at Tennessee tomorrow and had to build your staff with former Vol coaches, how would you construct it? Do you have a specialty or consider yourself a CEO type head coach? So you get 10 assistant spots, a strength and conditioning coach, and you can allot them to defense and offense however you like. Head coaches are eligible if you want to put Heupel or Kiffin in as the OC, Kiffin as a receivers coach. That's fair game. So of the 4,500 coaches, Rob, who have come through here the last 15 years, who you rolling with?
I mean, there have been some really good coaches come through here. As I said, I mean, Kiffin, offensive coordinator, Heupel, quarterbacks coach, and I don't know how they're called plays. And I would definitely be a CEO.
It would be more fun to construct the worst staff.
That would be. Is John AP? Do you still have the lake house number for John Palermo? The cabin.
There's never been more white paging search for John Palermo in some obscure town than my Google machine has ever done. That's for sure.
Sam Pittman, easy one for offensive line coach.
Yeah,
really easy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going Pittman, offensive line coach. Kiffin would be my receivers coach. Heupel would be my quarterbacks coach. They'd be co-offensive coordinators and probably kill each other in meetings, but it doesn't matter. We'd have a lot of ball plays drawn up there. My defensive coordinator would be Justin Wilcox.
Oh, totally.
That'd be my defensive coordinator.
You know, I would have said, based on his resume, I would have said Derek Ansley would be my secondary coach, but they weren't very good last year.
No, they weren't. I'll tell you who else was a bad fit, but is a good football coach, Dave Clawson.
Yes.
I would not hire him as I don't think I would hire him as my OC, but he's a good football coach. He's better than anyone's ever given him credit here. It was just a bad fit. He's
where he needs to be.
Absolutely, where he needs to be. AP, am I missing anybody?
No.
Jeremy Pruitt, linebackers coach?
No. Jeremy Pruitt, D-line coach.
Over Rodney? Come on.
It was a joke because he coached him last year, remember?
Well, he said he was coaching him last year. Nashville 615. Nat, was NIL a factor in retaining Hendon Hooker? Is that what Cedric Tillman is angling for in his delayed announcement? With the roster 95% for next fall, who are the vocal leaders? Juwan Jennings isn't sitting in the locker room, but seems like we may be losing some veteran leaders. Going to be hard to replace, like Alontae Taylor, Cade Mays, Matthew Butler, etc.
No, Hendon Hooker announced he was coming back without any firm NIL deal. Now, do I expect him to land said deal? Absolutely. But, he made that decision because he wanted to come back. But I expect Hendon Hooker, Cedric Tillman, some of those guys to sign some substantial deals.
All right. Leaders. Who do you like leaders on this team? Either one of you guys jump in here.
Hendon Hooker, Cedric Tillman. Defensively, man, I don't know. Like who do you have? I mean, I think Tyler Barron can be that. Does Byron Young have it in him? I don't think it's Jeremy Banks. I really don't think there's anybody at that linebacker spot. In the secondary, I think Tennessee's got to be faster at safety. So to me, they're going to have to, make a move or two there and get quicker at the safety spot. On the offense, Darnell Wright's not real talkative on the offensive line. Jerome Carvin should be. And Tillman's just so quiet. But so is Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, it's different at the quarterback position because everybody looks to you there. I mean, you can be quiet, but everybody's still looking to you that way.
I think he's not a senior, but I think Cooper, pretty strong personality, a guy that everybody seems to like.
Yeah. Bubblegum 760. You suspect any changes with the staff here after the bowl season? I don't think anybody knows the answer to that because you got a lot of trickle down effects going on. Still coordinator jobs to be filled out there, position coaches out there to be filled. Again, I think it goes back to Danny White. Where's he going to be with salaries for guys and who gets opportunities? So I don't see anybody leaving at this point, but I'm not going to be surprised if the phone's not ringing for some guys potentially in the month of January, just because there's so many jobs open out there.
Yeah, I mean, like a guy like Rodney Garner, he's drawing interest, but Rodney's very happy here, and
yes.
So I mean, I don't see. I'm with Hubs. I don't see really anybody doing that. But you never can say never in coaching, because if somebody comes with a promotion and a big chunk of change, nobody's going to bat an eye if somebody decides to do right by their family and take a big chunk of money and a promotion. Now, I don't think that's coming. I was actually talking to the head coach about that the other night, just from the standpoint of all of the different change that this place has seen. Just like they had six new defensive line coaches in 6 years once Dan Brooks was fired as part of former staff in 2008. Like this place has had so many strength coaches, so many different position coaches over the years. It needs a 2 or 3 year run of the same dudes leading it with no change, to me, just to kind of steady everything.
All right, a couple more and we're out the gate here. Rob, what was the true financial impact of the game being canceled last Saturday? Was there a payout guarantee or any kind of deal with that game being set in Memphis? I'm not aware of a payout guarantee there. Biggest expense was the travel expenses, right?
Just travel, hotel rooms for 20 something hotel rooms, catering 3 or 4 meals, renting out meeting space, and in an expensive hotel. So as Rick said the other day, it cost Tennessee dropped $30,000 on probably less than 24 hours in Nashville.
All right. Do you guys have your own personal favorite Vol player of all time? If so, what are your reasons? Did they become your favorite during their playing days or afterwards? Anybody got a favorite?
When I was a kid, I was a pretty big Dale Jones fan, I would say, Tony Robinson. But as far as like dealing with guys professionally, Chris Lofton, way up on my list. Eric Berry, way up on my list. And Grant Williams, way up on my list. Gerard Mayo. I like Gerard Mayo a lot.
Since Eric Berry is directly responsible for me working at Volquest, we'll go Eric Berry. Now, as a kid,
you should say Eric Berry.
As a kid, I would go James Littleman Stewart because I got to watch him play in high school.
Yeah.
And so you naturally become like as a little kid, you're like, oh man, that's awesome, that guy's. And then all of a sudden you see him wearing orange and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I enjoyed Todd Helton just because I knew him before he got to college. I've enjoyed seeing him some this fall. He's been around on campus a little bit. Been great to visit with him and catch up with him. Inky Johnson is a guy that I loved his story before he ever got hurt, and obviously what he's done after the injury has been pretty incredible. He's a great guy to continue to have conversations with. As a kid growing up, meeting Reggie White for the first time was pretty intimidating and pretty awestruck moment there, just because he was so much. It's the biggest guy I'd ever seen at that point in my life. I was a big Tony Robinson fan in '85 as well. The whole wristband on the ankle thing was pretty cool. So I was a big T-Rob fan. All right, we got just a couple minutes left. Last question out of the gate here for a couple people. What AP? What do you like about what are your impressions of Nico? What do you think everybody likes about Nico?
Unbelievable arm. Smart, great athlete, long. He has all the measurables, and so that's the biggest thing that I think everybody loves about Nico.
All right, favorite recruit from this year to talk to and deal with that signed with Tennessee, and favorite that you that enjoyed dealing with that didn't sign with Tennessee.
Well,
I'll say this. Go ahead, AP.
I was like, for me, that's easy. It would be Justin Williams. Even though I just got to know the kid in late October, just a really good kid and comfortable enough with me when he walks up. My whole line is like, when I see people that are older than me, what's up, old man? And now the kid's doing that to me. So that I like that kid a lot. Kids that didn't sign, it would be Dallin because I've known him forever, and it would be Ty, and that's because I put a lot of time and effort into kind of building that relationship, and he's kind of like an old head when it comes to talking. He always likes hanging out with older people there in Martin, so he talks like a 40-year-old.
Yeah,
for the over the years, I'll go Jamarcus Russell.
You're fine. He's right there with Randy Moss with me. Jamarcus and Randy, two of the greatest I've ever dealt with. Y'all got a pool. And yeah, I'm going to Notre Dame. Click my Randy Moss conversation. All right, remind me of this one. I'm going to leave this out. That he wanted this. This is a good podcast topic for slow time coming up whenever that comes about, and that is to compare and contrast Heupel's first year with the previous first-year coaches, Derek Dooley, Butch Jones, and Jeremy Pruitt. Their year one. That's a good podcast topic that we can go in depth with at some point. So you guys can remind me about that one at some point in time, and we'll try to get to that. It's a good question. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Smoky Mountain Organics Volquest.com mailbag podcast for Austin Price and Rob Lewis. I'm Brent Hubbs. Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll have a podcast for you next week coming up from Nashville. Get you ready for Tennessee and Purdue. And, of course, we'll continue with plenty of basketball coverage, recruiting coverage, and more at Volquest.com. Merry Christmas, everybody.
You've been listening to the Volquest podcast every week here on Volquest.